My name is Kelly Kester. I am the Director of Advanced Therapy Solutions at Cardinal Health. I am honored to be facilitating today's fireside chat with Marci McCue, who is going to be bravely sharing her experience as a patient with MS and is the first patient in the world to receive a CAR T cell therapy for MS. So really looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you all for joining here. And thank you to Marci for spending your time and for being with us.
Yeah, it's very nice to be here with this community. It's the first time I've ever told this story, so bear with me, but it'll be fun.
Really looking forward to talking with you all. So, Marci, as we dive in here, I know we have a couple of slides that we'll share. You were on quite a journey with your journey with MS prior to receiving a CAR T as part of a clinical trial. So can we start there? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey prior to that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how many of you know much about multiple sclerosis, but it is an autoimmune disease, and effectively your B cells from Epstein-Barr sort of misrecognize your myelin sheath around your nerve as the enemy, and so it sends T cells in to attack your own nerve sheath casing, which creates disruption in the way your nerves communicate and ultimately creates disability. And it's sometimes referred to as a snowflake disease. It's unique to each patient. You progress at different rates. You sometimes have relapses, maybe like a symptom once a year, maybe for your whole life, maybe it never really progresses, and other people are in progressive primary, which is like a very fast path to a wheelchair, inability to talk, inability to swallow, and ultimately it's what you die of. And so it's a pretty scary, lots of confusion around exactly how to diagnose it. You have some spots on your brain and maybe a little numbness, but there's no wow, you have a broken arm, or you have breast cancer, and there's no clear conclusive test for MS. So it's a pretty confusing degenerative disease. I wrote up a few things here, but these are the kinds of things you experience: sort of loss of mobility, loss of vision, loss of bladder control. Sometimes you have this very severe fatigue. And these types of things come and go, but at some point, for everybody with MS, it stays permanent. So you have these temporary things, and all of a sudden they become permanent. And then you're in this decline, and it's this free fall, and it's a very slow experience. So it's confusing to be diagnosed. I went through 3 different doctors when I first started having a little bit of weakness in my leg, and I thought, that's weird, I kind of fell. And I went to Mayo, I went to Stanford, I went to UCSF, I went to a couple local physicians, and everybody was sort of yeah, sounds like MS. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do about that? And the options at the time were beta interferon, self-injections. Nothing really was curing it. It was just this might help. And you're okay, well, what's the side effect? And the side effect is you'll feel like you have the flu all the time. And as you can tell, I had little kids at the beginning of this. By the time I actually had trouble, they were in their teens. So that was a 10-year journey of really nothing happening and not clear that I should do anything about it. I also have this thing called JC virus. In your brain, a lot of people have this virus, and if you get rid of your immune system with some of these interferons, the JC virus takes over and basically you die. It's 70–80% death rate of PML. And so the choices were really terrible for MS, and I think that's where my kind of timeline started. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you this is sort of my journey. And in that first section, it's really I think I was diagnosed. I wasn't really sure what I had. I had no really great options from a drug point of view, and I wasn't getting worse. So I was well, I think I'll just kind of ignore it. And I think a lot of us, when you have a cold or something, and it's not totally clear what you have, you kind of well, let's just see if it goes away before you go get on antibiotics or something, right? So that's kind of the first part of that journey, was really confusion. And doctors aren't really in a hurry with this disease. Your MS and a lot of chronic diseases are 20-year journeys. So the doctors meet with you every 3 or 6 months. We'll see how bad you are next year. And that's kind of not a great way to meet with the doctor, right? You don't want to meet only when you're getting worse. And that was kind of the state of things. You just meet when you're getting worse. So the beginning of it was really, this confusion and just a lack of urgency. I wasn't running to the hospital with a broken arm. I was sort of like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna see how long I last, But I wasn't really taking it seriously, honestly. It's like one of these things that you put in the back of your mind.
And I think you mentioned too, it's in the back of your mind, you're aware of it, but then at some point in your journey, you decided to take matters into your own hands, right? And really had to go on this journey of researching for yourself, advocating for yourself, en route towards the trial. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think this is probably the story of a lot of patients where when all of a sudden something is actually wrong, if you have a child that needs something or you get in a car accident, you find help, right? So when in the end of 2021, so this has been going on for 10 years, I start tripping and I walk a lot and all of a sudden I'm hitting this curb all the time and I'm falling and I'm like, well, that curb is just the problem. And then I started going around it and that wasn't helping either. And so then I looked it up online. I'm like, what is this, like when you have cramping in your legs and you can't pick up one of your feet, and they call it foot drop. And it turns out foot drop is really correlated to MS. It's like a classic symptom. And I was like, oh, that's what's happening. This is a nightmare. And so all of a sudden I was like, you switch mindsets. When you actually have something physical you can see and feel and you want to take control of, your mindset completely changes. And as my husband says, you have like this holy shit moment. Like, this is now out of my control and I have to do something serious about it. I've got kids I want to see graduate. I've got, babies I want to hold and grandkids, and I want to go on a hike. And all of a sudden, everything is going away quickly. And when you're faced with that, you really don't, you start to advocate for yourself in a way that you weren't before. And I think patient advocacy is a really tough thing because not everybody has the ability to, I live in Palo Alto, so Stanford is 10 minutes away. You see lots of learning institutions around me, good doctor choices, and I went to so I started looking up, clinicaltrials.gov. I'm like, okay, what can I do about this? Stem cell was very promising a few years, it just kind of come into its own. And I started looking at those trials and I sent it to my neurologist. I sent him like a list of trials. And he was like, are you crazy? Like, I'm not gonna research this for you. Like, why would I don't have this kind of time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I need physical therapy. I need, electromagnetic stimulation. I want access to all these things to take control of this. And he was like, I'm in private practice and I don't do that. And so that I think is a lot of the condition for people with autoimmune. Like, you're in a neurology office and they don't have the resources. So I left and I went back to Stanford where I had originally talked to the doctors at my first diagnosis, and I said, I have to have whatever is the cutting edge, what is out there. And at the time, like I said, it was stem cell. So I started asking a lot of questions, looking up, researching trials. I went and got everything. I think I listed it here. Like, I went onto keto diets. I went and got orthopedic, devices. I started doing PT. I started Botox. If you can use Botox to numb your nerves in your face, but you can also numb them in your legs. Nothing was great, honestly, but it was definitely kind of time to lean in. So then I talked to Dr. Dunn one day and I was like, what do we have? What's out there? What can we do? And I asked about stem cell, and stem cell seems like a pretty scattershot, it's a pretty broad spectrum treatment where they really knock everything out with a bunch of chemo and then they hope to rebuild your immune system in a healthy way. But there's no really great evidence on it. There's a study in the US called Beat MS, which is very popular for a stem cell study. But I didn't qualify for it, or it wasn't. And he said to me, he's like, there's this other approach that is coming. And he described CAR T therapy. and said we're working on getting a trial in place for it. And it's been sort of funded, but the FDA hasn't finalized it yet. And it's a very conservative program. It's called a 3x3, where they take 3 patients over 6 or 9 months, and then they can start up ramping it to ultimately be 12 in the trial. And so I was like, great, let's do it. So like if you all were told like that you were going to die of a disease, you would start deciding to find new ways to deal with it. I told another gentleman this morning, like if you found out today that you're going to die of a car accident, the question is like, would you get in a car? Like probably not, right? So like when you find out that this is your path, that you are going downhill quickly and that's going to be your future, you will do a lot of things to try and work around that. And so he told me tentatively that a trial was coming, and I basically just didn't relent. You know, I was calling every 2 or 3 months, where are we at? Have you heard? What's new? I had to wash out of my medication. I was on Ocrevus for about a year, and I went off of that, which is also a little risky when you go off of meds and you're in a progressive disease. And I kept pushing. And then finally, I think almost a year later, he said that the FDA had approved it and they were almost ready to start recruiting. They hadn't posted it yet. So that's another thing. It's like I was just in a position where I could ask about a trial that wasn't being recruited for, nobody knew about. And you kind of right place, right moment at some level. Mm-hmm. But it took a lot of advocacy, and I think that's a common story from what I've heard from everybody from Emily and Tom's family to baby KJ right before me, apparently. There's a lot of, willingness. You have to be willing to put it out there and say, like, I don't care what it is, I want to try it. And so that was kind of the journey to the trial. And then I kind of outlined a little bit about at the trial. I don't know if that's a familiar, CAR T is a familiar process probably for a lot of you and for oncology.
Well, and I think we talked a little bit about too, obviously your self-advocacy, being resilient and patient somehow, even in the face of, a terrifying condition and the functionality changes that you're experiencing as well. But when you finally got to the trial itself, I was lucky enough in the preparation to see a video of a harrowing speech that Marci gave right before she was being infused. But can you tell us a little bit about your experience with, the actual clinical trial itself? And, you've been on the journey towards it, but when you get to that process.
Yeah, I think that the worst part of the trial is right before, when you think you might not make it. Like, you're being evaluated. You have all these evaluation tests. And every time you go in to check if your heart can handle it, or if your, lung capacity, or you're just hoping that nothing arises so that you can make it. And then apheresis, which I don't know if any of you have been through a process of apheresis, but it's not great. It's like the worst experience, I think, of the whole thing. So it's an autologous cell, right? They take my T cells and then they genetically engineer them. Kyverna was the pharmaceutical organization that has, I think it's called their 101 cell, but it's genetically engineered. So after apheresis, they take your cells and genetically engineer them. It was supposed to be 2 weeks, and doctors call and it's actually going to take another week or 2. So there's like this, you're just constantly on pins and needles that this is actually going to happen. So checking in the hospital was great. Like, by the time I got to the hospital, I was super happy to be there. I was going to get 2 days of chemotherapy to bring your B cells down. And I was on an oncology floor, and I was the only MS patient there. And so a lot of you might see patients that are not sort of typical oncology patients, but my reaction was different, because for oncology, it's like the third line of defense. So patients on that floor were oftentimes had no hair, they were neutropenic, they were already really pretty beaten up, where I was like a completely healthy B cell count, right? I had normal, all my stats were normal, and so I didn't look and feel like other patients on the floor. So it was kind of interesting talking to different nurses and telling them what I might experience versus other people, and I never got neutropenic because I wasn't already depleted. I was able to kind of have no ICANS, I didn't have any CRS, I had no severe reaction. So I was pretty like happy on the floor. My husband would come every day. We'd have lunch. You know, it was a pretty normal experience. And then on day 8, I think I went home. And then on day 10, I went back into the hospital with a fever. So I did get a little bit of a fever. I think it was just like 99 degrees. It was not real fever. And the thing about MS patients is heat is not good for us because your nerves are trying to conduct too quickly, and they get more stressed. So I used every ice pack on that floor. I just ice packed myself and willed myself not to have any CRS reaction. So I never peaked anything, but all my numbers came in, which was expansion of the cells. So the infusion was kind of a big deal, although it was only about just under 10 milliliters of fluid. I think that's in the middle picture of them infusing, and it took about 2.5 minutes. And then that was it. There were about 30 people in the room, and including in that picture, it's Kai Verna, the head of BMT, and my neurologist, Dr. Dunn. And it was kind of a big moment because it was the first trial in the world to actually see if you live, so efficacy. And I would say, like, every patient report I've read since of people in MS or using, or any autoimmune having CAR T, it's safe. I mean, everybody's survived. There hasn't been any major reaction. I think Emily Whitehead had a large reaction. She was young and had a lot of cell count. I had 33 million cells of the T cells that were infused. So I lived. That was the first bar, I guess. And then my numbers were the T cells expanded to just under 500 million from 33. And then my B cells were depleted completely. So I had no B cells, but I never became neutropenic. I never really was compromised. And then the biggest test, I guess, was 6 months later. I had a lumbar puncture with a spinal fluid where they're looking for the protein markers for inflammation to see if there's any inflammation, because T cells are this magic component that can get through the blood-brain barrier, which is no other drug can do for MS. And most autoimmune diseases. So because the T cells could go so deep and really eradicate these bad-acting B cells, they measured the spinal fluid and saw 0 oligoclonal bands, which before my marker was like 4+. So they were gone. And so some people, like my husband, would say, "Oh, you're cured," right? I don't know that I'm that bold, but the idea that you could be is very powerful. And the notes I got from the doctors at the time were like over the moon about this is the first time we've ever eradicated oligoclonal bands from an MS patient because we were able to get into the CNS with T cell. And that was just awesome. And so talking to the people on the floor who were all oncology nurses was kind of fun because they were very curious and interested in learning about it. And my experience was so different than the third, line of defense for a cancer patient. So it makes me like want to tell the story, right? Want people to know that you can take that fear and uncertainty and confusion away from people, so that you don't walk. I used to get up in the middle of the night. And you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and it's kind of dark and you kind of feel your way around to a light switch. And I would just not turn on the lights and pretend, okay, if I wake up in the morning and I can't see, could I get to the bathroom? And that doesn't happen anymore. Like, I don't have to worry that tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and be more debilitated than I am today, or lose function, or not be able to get myself to the grocery store or out the door or go shopping with my kids, anything. So, and I work full time, and like that threat of not being able to like function is, that fear is not there anymore, which is like totally amazing to me that that's possible with the work that's happening here, that all this development, I mean, there's like 4 or 10 of us in the world now, and why why are we the only ones? You know, it feels like it's safe and it changes your life. It's not just physical stuff, but it truly changes your outlook on every single day. I made a mention here that I told my kids, I didn't tell my kids I had MS because I just told them I had a nerve issue. Because I would walk to school and their friends would be like, oh, is your mom okay? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I just have this like nerve thing. Like people would ask me, they still do, like, is everything okay? I'm like, yeah, it's just a nerve damage thing I'm dealing with. But after I knew I was in the trial, I remember having lunch with I think at the time she was like 13, and I told her I have MS and that it's this incurable disease, but we have a cure, and we have something we're gonna do to deal with it. So my kids didn't feel this desperation of your parent who can't function or is gonna die in this awful way, and they don't feel sorry for you. They actually think you're doing something about it. And to give your kids that, and I have this little picture of one of my daughters interviewing Dr. Losky, because after she found out I was in the trial, she wanted to tell other people. So she did a film for her class, for her high school, about how CAR T therapy is changing autoimmune diseases and the outlook of life. And like those kinds of things you can't do until you have an answer for them. It's like you wouldn't want to scare your kids. You want to give them an answer. And so there were some things that just are emotional changes that are way more powerful than whether or not I can like limp around or if I have a little numbness in my hand. Like just that really is the biggest change, I think, when you talk about like the journey and the lifestyle and what it could do, what it means for people.
And I think the word that you used when we were preparing for this conversation, what this trial meant to you was hope.
Yeah.
It gave you a new lease on life, if you will, right?
Yeah.
You were able to change your perspective to this dread of when you wake up in the morning, or how will I tell my kids to, we all have hope that we can do something about this. And I think all of us in this room and in this industry, that's why we're here today, is to make a difference for patients. So I know we have a couple of minutes here, but I would love to hear too, for you have folks from different parts of the industry in this room. What advice do you have for those who are in the cell and gene therapy industry?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm really impressed and amazed that this is even possible. Like, I don't know, I mean, the idea of genetically engineering your own cells and putting them back in your body and having them do the right thing is phenomenal. And I'm so grateful that this kind of work is happening. I wish it was happening for more people, obviously. And I would say I'm also interested in the idea that many people don't talk about it, right? Like I get on sometimes like an MS group or something every now and then, and I almost don't want to tell people that I've had this treatment because it feels I feel so lucky. But I think we have the obligation to let people know that there is hope, because it totally changes your lifestyle and your outlook on the whole world. Like the idea that you could actually take control of this disease. And then maybe finding paths to educate people about where they can do these things. Because I happen to have learning institutions near me, but I don't think everybody is. I mean, I was talking to George from the Whitehead Foundation. He was like, not everybody uses trials.gov, right? Mm-hmm. And we happen to have a shutdown going on right now, so it's like not even available. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe just don't be afraid to share information. I think, UCSF is doing stuff, Stanford's doing stuff, Penn is doing stuff, Mayo Clinic is probably doing stuff, the Cleveland Clinic is doing stuff, and everybody's sort of in isolation, and so there's not a lot of community awareness, I think, that's shared. Even the trial, like this is the first time I'm talking about it, and it's been a year. Mm-hmm. I happen to I'm on like a group chat called CAR3, and it's 3 of us who are in the trial because we happen to know each other. And that's great for patients, even though it's a little, I think, scary for trials and to be sharing so much information, because you could panic each other, or sometimes you think you're sharing something that's about you, but they want it to be about them too, and so it gets a little confusing. But it does make it. I think when you can tell more people about it, then more people will ask for it. and start to go to their practitioner and maybe demand it or look for it, right? So right now, I think it's too siloed. We always wonder how nobody hears about this. Like, I read all these newsletters, I read every day about it. I follow Dr. Giovannoni, who's a MS guy in the UK, who talks a lot about CAR T. It's one of the most promising developments for the autoimmune industry, or autoimmune patient cohort. I really think being able to talk is a hard thing, because the trials are so secretive, and there's so much, still so many unknowns that people don't want to share too much. But I think overshare a little bit. Tell people more, not less.
And I think that's something we talk about as an industry as well, is how do we increase patient access? There are near 2 million patients worldwide that are affected by MS, and there are maybe a handful that have had access to this treatment, but also connection and collaboration, whether it be in patient centricity and how we design clinical trials or think about our commercial strategies, but also how patients can connect with each other as well. It sounds like it's been really helpful. The CAR3, that's right. That's the name of the group chat. I love that.
Yeah, so I think that, and also, part of the stress of the process is it's a long process, right? Like, there's approvals and there's criteria. And so when you're an MS patient or an autoimmune patient, every day you wake up nervous and afraid. And if there's anything we can do to shorten that time frame where you get solutions faster. I mean, this was a 3-year journey for me, and I was after I knew that there was a trial. So, and over the course of 3 years, you can get worse quickly. Not everybody does, but I think also time to market would be helpful. Everybody, I mean, doctors are sort of observing you over years, and you're panicking every day. And so there's like a disconnect in your emotional state between medical care and your own, need to solve a problem. Like, if you had a broken arm, they wouldn't be like, well, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks, see how it goes, let us know. They'd be like, yeah, we're gonna fix you right now. And so you want more of that. And when you're in that state, when you're a patient, you really want to feel like people are as worried about you as you are, and that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned when we were preparing for this, that time is not just time, it's what functionality you have, but also what you could lose in between the different visits as well. And so that day to day, as opposed to month to month or years of waiting. So
yeah, like, I've lost some, I've regained some of my symptoms. Some of the symptoms are better. Like, I used to have more numbness in my face, or I used to have more cramping at night, and I don't have that anymore. Some of those things are good, but then that idea of when you go to a doctor appointment, it's not like, how bad are you now? Like, what else got bad? It's now like, what else is gone, and what could be better? And that's a totally different doctor visit than I'm used to. So
it's totally changed the scope, it sounds like, of when you go in for an appointment and what that looks like as well. So. Well, I know that we're coming up on time. So, Marci, as we are closing here, is there anything else that you'd like to say to this group or to the industry?
No, I hope that everybody's mission around CAR T or gene therapy is accelerated, and that all of the work is able to come to patients like me, because it changes you from fearing every day to being excited about what's next and how you can actually work on your disease, get better, and not about how bad you're going to get. And that is transformational. And so if you can just keep doing that, that would be, and more people, I think,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you so much, Marci, for sharing your story. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job.